What's up, freaks? This is just me, and today we're talking about the side ab and thigh pose, or maybe you could call it the oblique ab and thigh. This is the variation of the ab and thigh when the bodybuilders twist to the side and put more emphasis onto their obliques instead of the six pack, although you can still see the abs, of course. We have many executions of this pose. The one on the right, the one where the guys keep both their arms behind their head, like in the standard ab and thigh, and they just tilt to the side to showcase the obliques more than the abs. Then the most common execution is probably the one with one arm behind the head and the other arm kind of on the side of the body in a most muscular position. But second from the right is another possible execution, which is the one when the bodybuilders have one arm behind their head and one arm down, but they're not really crouching down on the oblique muscles. There's a lot of executions, yeah. And lastly, there's the execution with one arm behind the back instead of being flexed on the side of the body. Alright, that's what we're looking at in today's video. I'm gonna go through bodybuilders throughout bodybuilding history that hit the post were, or at least decent, in my opinion, and talk about them just shortly. Alright, let's get into it. Now, this pose became more popular in more recent years, I found, but there were some guys hitting it all the way back in the 1950s and 60s. Here is Bill Pearl, one of the first Mr. Universe champions. The pose is not really hit to spec because Bill is not focused on his obliques, but although it's true he isn't really even doing the pose if you ask me, he's very close to it, and to my knowledge he's the first to ever do it. Bill of course has amazing abs and he looks pretty good, a very streamlined physique, very aesthetic. Here is the Austrian oak though, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is a 7-time Mr. Olympia from the 70s, and Arnold was never the best in the ebb and thigh, but this execution suited him pretty well in my opinion. Here we can see him again. You can see he's really not the best in the midsection because he only has got a 4-pack and the obliques in my opinion are nothing special, but at least the midsection's tight, a great lat taper, so the oak doesn't look bad. Now in the 80s, there was the Golden Eagle Tom Platz. You can see, of course, godlike legs, especially for the 80s, and a small sunken midsection. Great execution of the pose. Looks amazing. The obliques are nice and ripped, and Tom also has great abs, undeniable. Moving in the 80s, there was Thierry Pastel, who had a great midsection. You can see how thickly developed his midsection is in these pictures, but he also had pretty good obliques in my opinion. Here he is again, although admittedly we can't see much from these bad quality pictures, which I apologize for. Still it's visible that Thierry has a lot of detail in the whole midsection area. Next, here is Rich Gaspari. I found these photos that looked pretty impressive to me. The abs and obliques look nice and very diced, but the Dragon Slayer was not particularly fond of this execution of the Avantai, so let's move on. An aesthetic icon, Lee Labrada, his name was masked with glass, holds true in the side ab and thigh pose where he looks very pleasing to the eye and also detailed, particularly in the six-pack and obliques as well. So he looks very good despite being a bit smaller of a bodybuilder overall. Little Brada, very diced in the midsection. Now another aesthetic guys, this time from the 90s, Charles Claremont, ladies and gentlemen. Looks amazing in almost every pose, including the side ab and thigh if you ask me. I like both of his executions here. I think he looks very genuine and natural in the pose, like he was made to do it. Again, he looks great here in these photos as well. A streamlined waist, well-defined abs, and supremely separated obliques. That's why the pose works really well for Charles Claremont. This is a photo of poor Catrell, who is a one-hit wonder for sure, but he looked pretty good in this photo, so I'm showing it. Only a 4-pack, but still well developed. But to be honest, the obliques, nothing to write home about, so let's move on again. This is Vince Taylor. Both execution and both pics, he looks great thanks to his great ab development. A nicely shaped six-pack with deep cuts, and the oblique development is also really impressive. And also take a look at the quads. Wow, that's something really nicely shaped and pretty massive as well. And here's the Maryland muscle machine Kevin Lebron. He also has a great side ab and thigh pose thanks to his sharp obliques mainly. And the six-pack also wasn't bad on Kevin, not even close. It's just that in the 90s he had to face guys that were even better in this area. Here he is again, nailing the execution of the pose, if you ask me. I really like it. Also, note all the definition through the midsection. And when we talk about Kevin Lebron, we also gotta mention Shawn Ray, right? He's absolutely nailing the pose. He's iconic in it. He's one of the best in history to hit it. Just look at the obliques. They look like gills. They're so perfectly shaped. All of them are perfectly aligned, and they're so eye-catching. It looks unreal. It looks almost Photoshop. Let's take another look because Shawn, the little giant killer, looks absolutely glorious. Look at all the detail and conditioned muscle on his body, including the perfectly formed abs and overall a great upper body. This is just amazing. This is one of Shawn's poses. Doesn't matter if we talk about the standard execution of the ab thigh or this one that focuses on the obliques, he just nails it. But there's another amazing talented bodybuilder from the 90s, the Sultan of Symmetry, Flex Wheeler. And it's the same as with Shawn. Crazy obliques, nicely shaped abs, and also nice feathering in the quads. We need to see him again. And this execution, in my opinion, is even more impressive on the Sultan of Symmetry, because when he hits the straight on ab and thigh pose, the standard one, he looks godlike, but he also was a bit of a lack of V-taper, which is a feature that is shown to a lesser extent in the side ab and thigh. So in my opinion, Flex looks even better than in the standard ab and thigh. It even hides the asymmetry he has in his six-pack, so this is the perfect pose for him. The midsection is simply money, and the gills, the obliques, they're second to none. And although we're talking about these aesthetic icons, we also had mass and conditioning icons like Dorian A2, in my opinion, nails the pose. The way he strikes it is absolutely on point. He might not have the detail and perfect shape of the midsection, but he has quality detail in the abs, and his obliques also look pretty good. It's really surprising to me how good the shadow looks in the pose. The obliques are sharp and the midsection doesn't look bloated whatsoever. It looks pretty in check. He could definitely challenge other competitors in this pose, although he's not exactly known for aesthetics. Here's a 90s Ronnie Coleman. That's quite a surprising entry, at least to me, but here he looks pretty good. I like his squats quite a lot because he had amazing thighs, and his midsection doesn't look bad at all. So I just wanted to showcase him. He was pretty aesthetic at the start of his career. Now we continue to the 2000s, and we only have one photo of a four-time Mr. Olympia Jay Cutler because I don't think anybody really hit this pose, at least not that often in the 2000s. Jay liked to hit the standard ab and thigh because his obliques, as it appears here, were nothing special. Look at the feather quads though. But let's go and move on to the next bodybuilder, shall we? This is Silvio Samuel, not a household name, but he had a very thickly developed midsection. It looks like he's got a few bricks instead of a six-pack, if you ask me. The highlight, however, is the amazing obliques. They're all in line and they're so detailed and defined, separated. He really looks very glorious, especially the midsection is one of a kind, and especially for being a lesser known guy, so take note of him. Moving on, we have David Henry. He competed in the open class and then in the 202 and 212 divisions in the 2000s and 2010s. And David liked to do this execution of the ebb and thigh. That's the reason why I have him in this video. He looks shredded to the bone in the lower body, and the midsection is also nice and pretty streamlined. And the main feature, the obliques muscles, are also not lacking behind. They're pretty good in my opinion. Here is Kai the Predator Green, who doesn't have the best ebb and thigh pose, but for what he's got to work with, being a bit thick through the waist, he looks decent enough for me to mention him. The quads, for instance, absolutely are almost second to none. Look at the insane size and the feathering, all the details. The midsection is in check because Kai is keeping it flexed, which is very wise. And the obliques are actually really solid, to be honest, if you ask me. Kai's obliques have good detail, so this pose is not bad on him. But next is the 2018 Miss Olympia Shawn Flexitron Roden, who, as we all know, has an amazing midsection. He looks better in the standard ebb and thigh, in my opinion, but he also looks supreme here, of course, too. He actually looks pretty great in any aesthetic pose, which this is, in my opinion. The abs are almost one of a kind in this era, so I hope Shawn comes back. Anyway, not like he's got a choice, right? The V-taper is glorious because of the small waist, and the definition through the ab and oblique regions is also absolutely on point. And that's gonna sound a bit odd, but look at the glute, how huge it appears from this angle. Probably depends on personal preference if the glute jutting out there looks good to you or not. It's not that important. I don't really like it, but whatever. Now we move on to the 2019 Olympia champ, Brandon Curry, who also has a tremendously developed midsection to go along with his extra small waistline. So an awesome V-taper because of that. Also the legs, they don't look bad from the side. And I like the original execution in the pic on the left as well. Another look. We cannot see it particularly well in these pictures, but Brandon's abs and obliques are also pretty well defined, so he belongs on the list of the best side ab and thigh poses. But there's also the Persian wolf, Hadi Chupin, whose ab makeup looks absolutely gorgeous in the pose. The quads and the six-pack are both one of the best in today's lineups, so that definitely helps. And then look at the amazing obliques, of course, as well. Hadi is built to the bone, he's known for it, and his obliques are also reminiscent of gills to me. They look really sharp and beautifully shaped too. So Hadi Chupin is super impressive as I see it. William Bonac, not so much. He still looks good, and it's definitely a smart decision on William's side to go for this execution of the ebb and thigh pose rather than the standard one, but still the midsection itself is just never gonna be pretty. But it has to be said overall, when the Conqueror keeps the midsection sucked in, he doesn't look half bad at all. Plus, take a peek at the thigh. The feathering looks pretty good. So I decided to showcase him because he does this pose very often. Now that's John De La Rosa. He's not anything to gaze at either, but he's got a decent definition in his abdominals and obliques. I guess an honorable mention because I wanted to have him in his video, and I like the execution, and he looks pretty good. This is Juan Morel. He looks a bit better, if you ask me. He has a streamlined waist and a beautifully defined six-pack, and the ab separation is really good. And when he's conditioned, he also shows excellent obliques. Really well separated, and overall a great midsection on Juan Morel Shully. Also, here you have Handrel Brada, who has tremendous potential because he's still young and he can go really far, in my opinion. He has got great obliques, so of course he's gonna look good in this pose. We're talking the side ab and thigh. The midsection definitely could be more defined and peeled, so maybe Hunter can improve on that. To my taste, again, the same thing with the glute as Shawn Roden had. It's a real standout, at least once you notice it, you can't unsee it, but it definitely doesn't ruin the pose. So in my opinion, a great, great pose for Hunter. Definitely a good choice to hit this execution on his part. And in my opinion, also Steve Kuklo looks very decent in the pose. He's of course another one of the nowadays competitors. He's shredded in the entire body, although the midsection, it has to be said, not that diced. But he's still got a sunken waist and decent obliques, so that's enough to make the pose look respectable. We can see his lower body in these pictures too, and I think it looks pretty good. The midsection doesn't look great, but overall the pose looks alright. The arms look very conditioned, for instance. This is Mohamed Shaban, who's got great potential in my opinion because he's hardworking and he keeps trying and trying. He goes on and on, which I adore and admire. But anyway, in the side ab and thigh, he looks very decent. Not too great on the right though. I put him here in this video mainly because of his quads. Look at the size of these. That's something. Those are huge quads. He just needs to dial it all in, and then he's gonna be a real force. And I would love to mention one more open class bodybuilder, another guy with grotesquely massive thighs. And I'm talking about Hassan Mustafa. Hassan is also a workhorse, just not sharp enough. Even though from this pose he looks decently cut, if you ask me. The midsection is not very trim, but at least the obliques and quads look impressive, so not bad. Here's the nowadays 212 athlete, QM Pearson. He was also in the classic physique division. You can see that because he has a great structure for it. Look at the tiny waist and great V-taper. In my opinion, everything but Keon's abs look absolutely world class. I like his aesthetics a lot in this pose. The shape of the abs is kind of strange. No disrespect, but it just doesn't look very pleasing. But anyway, to finish off this video, we have a classic physique pro by the name of Alex Cambronero. He looks really good in the pose and really aesthetic, and he's got great cuts in the oblique region, good definition, and look how tight and small the waist is. And the crazy lats, almost picture perfect execution, and the pose overall also looks very good, especially in the middle picture. I gotta say I'm impressed with Alex, so hats off to the guy. And not only to this guy, but to everyone I featured in this video. So, guys, let me know down in the comment section below if you like the side ab and thigh pose, or if you would just stick with the standard straight on version. And also, you can let us all know if there's anyone who hits this pose well that I missed. Plus, did you like the video, and did you agree with my picks? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to watch some side ab and thigh videos, and also like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day.